Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to week 18 of WiggyWam Get Your Property Questions Answered. And first of all, before I start anything, let me wish you a very, very happy new year. I hope you've had a wonderful time over Christmas, and it's been a useful time to reflect on the year that's just gone, and certainly given you some breathing space, shall we say, and getting your head into gear ready for the new year, which I'm sure is going to be pretty exciting, judging by the headlines in the press over the course of the last few weeks and months. And I'm certainly hopeful that this year is the year that helps to make the difference in your life and your business, as it may be. For many people, I think this is the time of year when people set New Year's resolutions and try to build new habits or new ideas about what they want to do in their business and their life. And with that in mind, I'd like to share a little resource with you, which we'll send out on email. But if anybody who doesn't receive it on our email list would like a copy, it is a goal-setting template, which we put together as part of the general content that we provide for WiggyWam. It's a very, very interesting document, which I really encourage you to get your hands on, purely and simply because it contains a summary of many, many years of the sort of personal development work that I've done in the background and all the various different mentors that I've been to see, and the kind of self-reflective questions that you would probably benefit from, if I'm honest. There's 26 questions in total. So those are the sort of self-reflective questions that you would kind of benefit from asking yourself about how you can improve yourself based on your business and your life going forward, and also to reflect on the lessons that you've learned over the course of the last year or so. So if that sounds like it's of interest to you, please just send me an email at happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. That's happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. And in the subject line, just put goal setting template, and we'll happily share a copy of that with you. I think it's about 30 pages long or something. So it's quite an intense document, but it really does take you by the hand and lead you through the what I think is a very beneficial process to help you set your goals. And not only that, we'll share with you some certain techniques that will help in terms of, how do I best put it, in terms of helping you to reflect on those goals and those dreams and draw them towards you, rather than feeling like you've actually got to go out there and manipulate life and be on a treadmill 18 hours a day in order to try and get the body that you want and all that sort of thing. I think there's some simpler hacks that you can employ when you know what they are. And again, this document covers all of those. So as I say, if you want a copy, let me know. Happy to help at wiggywam.co.uk, and in the subject line, put goal setting template, and we'll happily whiz that across to you via the wonders of email, which will be pretty amazing. So we've got some pretty exciting things unfolding behind the scenes at WiggyWam again. During the course of this year. It is going to be a very intense year. We are looking to build strong relationships in the industry with a number of different influencers or people who want to see a change for the better, shall we say, in the way that properties are bought and sold and the speed at which those transactions go through. What we are offering as part of that is for anybody that wants to come on one of our weekly webinars, or we'll do a dedicated special what we're calling our Experts Corner webinar, where you'll get a chance to share your knowledge and expertise with our audience. And that can be just, doing a simple sort of Q&A on a few different things. If you're an expert lawyer, or you're an expert surveyor, or an expert estate agent or letting agent, anybody that's connected with the home moving process, would like to invite you to come on one of our webinars, and we'll do that interview with you, which will not only help you to share your expertise with our audience, but also you can use it as a bit of a marketing resource for your business. You can post that onto your website or share it through your email list and all the rest of it, which will help your audience to understand that you really are the expert in your field. I know in today's world, there is a lot of people suggesting that you need to be producing a lot of internet content and all the rest of it. And this can really form a valuable piece where you can be aligned with a company like WiggyWam and all of our other experts, which will be unfolding over the course of this year. And we've got some pretty big names already lined up to take a space on one of those webinars, which is pretty cool. So you'll be seeing more of these unfolding starting as of next week, which we're really thrilled and excited about to be able to bring you. And it is about learning and sort of understanding best practice in the industry. And as a result of that, we can all sort of grow our businesses and help our clients more and more, rather than being stuck in a situation where we're getting frustrated because our business isn't operating the way that we want to, or our clients aren't getting the best service possible that we know we could deliver if only other people in the chain would pull their finger out and all the rest of it. So if you're interested in coming on a future webinar, again, hit me up on the email. That's happy to help at WiggyWam.co.uk. That's happy to help at WiggyWam.co.uk. And in the subject line, just put webinar interview. That'll do, webinar interview. And yeah, we'll reach out to you and we'll book an appointment in with you. It won't take any more than about 30 or 40 minutes, I wouldn't have thought. We'll do it via Zoom so we can be remote wherever you are. If you're on a beach in Bali or wherever else you might be in the world, we can do it remotely. And it should be fairly straightforward and easy enough to go out to our database and our mailing list and help you get a bit more exposure as well. And I particularly want to throw that out to anybody who's connected with the property industry as a whole. As I say, estate agent, letting agent, removals companies, surveyors, solicitors, mortgage brokers, financial advisors, anybody that's connected with that entire pattern, please do get in contact with us and we'd love to have you on. All right, so that's a bit of an intro to this webinar today, guys and girls. Let's get started with question number 1, which comes in from Michael. So hi there, Michael. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for being part of the WiggyWam community. Michael says, my star player handed their notice in before Christmas, and they're going directly to the competition. He wants to know, how do I recruit more great staff to join our business, as I'm worried they know all of our internal secrets and will share them with the competition, making them even stronger. We can't afford to pay them more, so how do I attract more staff with limited resources? Okay then, Michael, well, thank you for your question. I'm sorry to hear that you've been put in that position, which is never great. And obviously I don't know all the circumstances that have surrounded this, whether it is a case that they've asked for a pay rise and it hasn't been able to be granted to them for whatever reason, or whether or not they've just been tempted away with more money or greater opportunity by your competition. But one of the things I would be looking at, Michael, is whether or not, if this particular person is open to perhaps changing their mind, are you in a position to offer them either more responsibility or more ownership of the company? And that can come in various different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be share ownership of the company, although that might be a good idea to kind of tie somebody into the company if you feel that they've got long-term potential and you feel that they're very much of the kind of shall we say, part of the culture that you've created within the business. And if you really think that they have the potential or the ability to help your business grow, giving away a couple of percentage points of ownership of the business may then help your business to expand a lot quicker, because they're no longer just working for a pay packet, right? They're actually working for the ownership of the business and a share of the profits potentially. So that would be something that I would look at. And when I say responsibility, there could be other things that might spark their interest as to why they would want to remain with you in the business. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, and I'm using my own experience here, Michael, is that when you're part of an organization, sometimes you can see better ways of doing things. And I've found this in a lot of roles that I've had within either a job role or as a business role. You can always usually see better, easier, faster ways of doing things if your eyes are open to that sort of possibility within a company. So in this instance, could this star player want to take responsibility for some of those things that they see within the business if they're getting frustrated that certain things are being done where they feel it's a waste of time or there's more efficient ways of doing things? Could you give them that responsibility to actually go out and start implementing it and standing by them? Obviously, if they make any mistakes, it is kind of on your head. But the point is, it's kind of releasing that enthusiasm within them, which would allow them to bring those improvements to the business for the benefit of all, rather than them sitting there being a store of frustration because they can see a better way of doing things and it isn't being implemented, or they're coming up against resistance within the power structure within the business. And as a consequence, they've just thrown the towel in and gone, do you know what, actually, I'm moving on to another firm here because I can see a better way of doing things, or I'm being given more autonomy within another company and all the rest of it. So that would be a couple of things that I would bear in mind. Also, Michael, one of the things I want to say to you is there might be other opportunities where you want to look at expanding your business over the course of the next few years. And there might be opportunities that as the market gets tougher, perhaps some of your competitors would want to leave. Maybe they'll want to sell their business. Maybe their business will fold. Maybe there's opportunities to merge. And I know you said that you're starting with, well, you've got limited resources, but I would be open to the possibility of approaching this star player that's leaving and saying to them, look, this is my plan. I want to expand the business in this way. We want to either acquire more offices, or we want to acquire more practices, or we're thinking about merging with so-and-so. Would you be interested in heading up one of those offices or those branches, or would you like to be part of helping us expand in this way? Because if they are essential people to your business, it would be a shame to let them go. And they might be tempted to stay on the promise of more responsibility, ownership of the business, and sharing in the profitability or the growth potential of the company, rather than just with a monthly pay packet. Okay, so those are the sorts of things I would look at. The other thing I want to say, Michael, as well, and this is something that I go into, I think it's in volume 3, but also it's within the Estate Agent Secrets Trilogy series, and this applies to estate agents or solicitors, whether or not, whichever business you're in. But one of the things I talk about is building a subs bench for your business, and what that means is, as a football team would have a subs bench of players that are happy to play in certain positions on the field if the main player gets injured or what have you. Sorry if I'm not explaining this very well, but I don't really follow football, if I'm honest, but I'm using it as a loose example, Michael, so I hope you'll forgive me. But the point is that those people sitting on the subs bench are easily able to step into the role of a player who needs to leave the field. Okay. Now, in this instance with your subs bench, and one of the things I want to say here, Michael, is that you can build up a subs bench by talking to other people in the industry or in your area that might not be looking to move immediately, but you recognize they've got potential. You're keeping your eye on them, and you think, actually, do you know what? Now might not be the right time to approach them, but you could have a gentle, soft conversation with them and say, Happy New Year, how are you? What are your ambitions for the future? Do you know where you want to be in 6 months' time, 12 months' time? And through your natural connections in the industry and in your area, you're going to start to talk to these people and potentially earmark them for some position in the future. And it might just be a casual throwaway comment that says, you know what? If you are thinking about moving in the future, let me know, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. No pressure, no expectation, just go for a coffee or whatever else it might be. But the point is, you're kind of earmarking people, and it might be 2 or 3 people that you have on your subs bench for each particular position within your business. So that if the situation occurs again in the future, Michael, and somebody says they want to step away, well, you just go to your subs bench rather than feeling like you've got a gun to your head because somebody's demanding more money and you can't afford to pay it. You might actually have 1 or 2 or 3 people on your subs bench that you can go to and say, do you know what, actually, I've got an opportunity that might be opening up here. Would you like to go for a coffee and have a chat about it? And that kind of takes the pressure off you. And it's not something that I see that many people do in business, to be honest with you. They don't necessarily have that subs bench earmarked. But it is a real, shall we say, it's a real relief to have it in the background because of the pressure it takes off you when you get faced with situations like this in business. So I hope that helps, Michael. I hope that gives you some idea. That's exactly how I'd play it if I was in your shoes. I think it's worth a conversation. I think it's worth a coffee. Hopefully you haven't fallen out with them, and maybe you could elicit some feedback from them. That would be a good place to start as well, Michael, to say, do you know what? Can we just have a frank conversation? What's the real reason you're leaving? I know you're going to tell me that you've perhaps got more opportunity with this company or whatever, but what's actually the real reason you're leaving? Is it something we've done? Have we upset you? Are you frustrated about certain things within the business? Just help me to improve the business and help the staff that are still staying. And it might well be that you could find some common ground that would allow you to retain them and actually grow the business going forward. So I hope that helps, Michael. The one thing I will just say as well is I wouldn't be too worried about the internal secrets of your business. Having been in that position before myself when I've moved on, I I mean, I'd like to think I'd had enough integrity not to share those with, the business that I'm joining. Doesn't mean to say that as an individual, you couldn't use them to your advantage in certain situations. But I think, the staff that you've employed there, you'd like to think they've got enough integrity to kind of keep certain things to themselves and just integrate themselves within the culture of the business that they're going to, rather than trying to bring stuff from an outside source into that culture and then finding out there's a culture clash and things don't work, and therefore they may be alienated or ostracized from the culture of the company as a whole. I hope that makes sense. But if not, as I say, I encourage you to read Estate Agent Secrets, and that'll give you a bit more information about what I'm talking about there. All right, so reach out to me if you want a copy of that, Michael. All right, so good luck with that. Anything else we can do to help, then let me know. But failing that, I wish you the best of luck and hope that the sort of guidance I've given you there is fruitful. All right, wonderful. Thanks, Michael. Moving on, question number 2 comes in from Peter. Hi there, Peter. Thank you for your question and for being part of the amazing WiggyWam community. Peter says, I'm thinking about calling it a day within my legal practice and cashing out by putting it up for sale. Do you have any tips on getting the best possible price for my business? All right, well, that's a nice, short, simple question, Peter. Thank you for that. Well, I don't know whether it's simple, but it's certainly short. Let me give you some pointers on this one, Peter, if I can, please, because I've looked at a lot of different businesses, particularly legal practices as well, over the course of the last probably 3 or 4 years, I would say. And there is a massive difference between those that fetch the really good prices and those that either fail to sell or have to close because they can't find a buyer, or are in some other way put out of business. And you haven't given me much information to go on here, Peter, so I don't have a lot of information around the cash flow of your business, or the profitability, or the turnover, or the client base, or the type of work that you do. All that sort of thing has a bearing. But one of the biggest things that I've seen, particularly in relation to legal practices, is that a lot of them are quite small businesses. And what I mean by that is that you have either 1 or 2 practitioners within the business, and then they have admin support staff underneath them. And the real challenge you've got is that when you leave the business, okay, if you're the one with all the knowledge and the contacts and the resources and that sort of thing in your head, then when you leave, all of that knowledge and information and resources goes with you, and you are in effect the business. And this is what prevents so many people from getting the value that they feel that they've built up in their business. And it's more painful for solicitors and legal practitioners, because they feel that, first of all, they've had a good profession, and it's a reasonably well-paid profession. And so as they've spent 10, 20, 30 years in their business over, building this thing up, they automatically assume that it's worth an awful lot of money. But coming back to the point I've just mentioned about, you being the business, and when you leave the business, all of that goes with you, then you can hopefully see there's some obstacles there in terms of trying to attract a buyer in the first place. And then secondly, once you've got a buyer, actually then extracting as much value as possible from it. And that can be a real major challenge. And I've had this with a number of different sellers, particularly looking at small businesses. And the most recent person I spoke to, who was a self-employed conveyancer, he was just looking for an astronomical figure for his business based on the fact that he was it and he was leaving. And I'm like, well, but I can't see the value there, because you're going, and all the rest of the business is left to fend for itself, if you like. I'm coming in as a non-lawyer, for example, and I might be able to help build the business, but I actually need people to do the work as well. And so there is much greater value, I found personally, from looking at legal practices in the, shall we say, £750,000 a year turnover and above, because generally there's not a single point of responsibility. There's actually usually some kind of board of directors. And then you've got several other staff in place who are used to dealing with the day-to-day functioning of the business, okay? And again, the second thing that I see with a lot of businesses is that they don't have clear systems in place, which means having some kind of systems manual or some kind of operations manual where anybody coming into the business from an outsider's point of view could pick that manual up, start to read through it, and actually be able to carry out operations within the business and sort of slip into somebody else's shoes as quickly as possible. And without those systems in place, there really is a huge amount of value that people are leaving on the table when it comes to selling their business. And I'm just being frank with you here, Peter, because I think you deserve honest, forthright advice based on your question here. The third thing I see as well, Peter, is that depending upon how big the business is, and this may not apply in legal practice because you guys are fairly straightforward in terms of the numbers side of things, but what I have seen with a lot of other entrepreneurs when they look to sell their business is, as a self-employed person or a small business owner, what they tend to do is they, shall we say, present almost two sets of books on the business. So one is their own internal books as to how much money they're making, and the second is actually the books that they present to the taxman, as it were. And there can be a bit of a difference between those two books. And I'll give you an example. We actually looked at a business in America. I won't say where it is or what it was, but it was a really interesting business, and it was kind of close to my heart for a number of different reasons. I say I won't go into it because it could give it away. But we walked around this business, fell in love with it. I thought, yeah, this could really, really work. And I said, let's have a look at your books. And the guy was like, oh, we don't actually have any books. And I said, what do you mean you don't have any books? He said, well, because we have we make a certain amount of profit, but actually, we really make a huge amount of profit in the business. And I'm like, okay, but how do I verify that if I don't have any books, right? And the guy's response, I kid you not, the guy's response was actually to say to me, look, I can literally show you a room with a pallet full of cash on it, literally like kind of Breaking Bad scenario. And I was like, yeah, but that doesn't really work for me because, this business could be failing and I don't know because none of the books are there to evidence it. And what I suggested was that we would strike a deal based on I would make them payouts over the course of the next 3 years based on the performance of the business going forward. So if it failed within the first year because actually the business was ruined and pulled all the cash out of it, then I wouldn't actually pay him anything for the business, right? But this two types of books or three types of book scenario that people produce within their business is one of the things that holds them back in terms of the value, because clearly any business wants to show a reduced amount of profit so that they pay less tax. But when it comes to sell, it's very difficult to say to somebody coming into your business that, well, actually we make more profit than we've said on our books, but we just do that as a tax exercise, because how, again, can they verify whether or not these figures are true? And that's certainly one of the things that I think causes a major stumbling block for a lot of sellers trying to maximize the value from their business. So the only way to get around that is to produce, forthright and honest books over the course of 2 or 3 years, because most buyers will want to see the performance over the course of the last 3 years. And of course, we've had COVID in that period as well, which will no doubt have a knock-on effect on most businesses, but either they've taken on more debt as a result of trying to manage that period, or they've seen a drop in income, potentially both, and lots of profitability. So without clear books and without systems and without a proper business structure, if you're the sole person leaving the business, then unfortunately a lot of value disappears from the business. And I forget the exact stats on this, but it's something like the amount of businesses that are actually put up for sale that actually sell is only about 1 in 10. I could be wrong on that stat, but I seem to remember those were the stats that I read on somebody who'd done a lot of research on this about the number of businesses that actually get put up for sale, particularly smaller businesses, and only about 1 in 10 actually ends up selling. The rest are either get withdrawn from the market or they're forced to close as a result of the business owner wanting to retire. So I think this is not quite as simple as throwing the business up for sale and selling it. If you've got systems in place, if you've got a board of directors in place, and you've got operations that are happening day in, day out, and the business is running smoothly, and you get to spend 3 months a year on a beach and the business just carries on ticking over and making a fortune, then you're in a great position. and the business will fetch, or should fetch a tidy sum. But if it's like most businesses that I see, you're going to have to work hard to extract value. And one of the biggest things I can tell you, Peter, if you want to extract the most value, would be to offer some form of seller financing for the buyer coming in to buy the business. Okay, and what that effectively means is that you're creating an IOU between you and the buyer, and you would oversee that relationship very carefully over the course of the term of the deal that you've agreed. So it might be what we call a 3-year note or a 5-year note between you and the buyer, and the buyer would effectively pay you interest on the outstanding balance if that's what you want, and also stage payments on the outstanding balance over the course of that term. And if that sounds a little bit complicated, let me know, and I'll happily fill you in on a bit more detail. But that's one of the quickest and easiest ways, in my humble opinion, for you to get the most value, because what you've got to bear in mind is any buyer coming in may not have all of the cash that you want in order to allow them to buy it. And then if they're going to go off to try and raise that money, there could be many obstacles that are put in place by potential lenders, such as banks and building societies. They may only provide a certain amount of the cash needed to buy it, and there might be, you might be hugely adrift on the numbers. So if they're putting a little bit of skin in the game, it's helpful for you to oversee the operation during the course of the term, but also for you to offer seller finance, and that, I think, will help to get the most value out of the deal. All right, so I hope that helps, Peter. I'm happy to answer any more questions you may have on this, because it is an exciting time and can be a time fraught with frustration. I do see a lot of business owners get really excited about putting their business up for sale, and they think, it's going to be great, I'm going to put it on the market. Who wouldn't want to buy this opportunity? And then it goes on the market, and the business broker doesn't help, by the way. Who usually business brokers talk a really great game. They'll take cash off the seller up front, and then months will go by without potentially much interest or much serious interest, and then the seller gets disheartened, and then it becomes more awkward. And one of the final biggest things to say, Peter, is that when sellers have made that decision to sell their business, at that point they've kind of mentally checked out, and as a consequence, the performance of the business can start to drop. So if you're not careful, if you're not executing this quickly, then you can actually see the performance of the business start to drop, because actually you've already decided, I don't really want this anymore. You're not going to put the same love, care, and attention into it as you would have done perhaps when you're starting up the business. And as a consequence, the performance can begin to slide, and it can actually become a depreciating asset if you're not careful. So lots to think about there, Peter. Hope I've not thrown too much at you, but certainly let me know if there's anything more I can do to help you on that one, and I'd be glad to help you out. All right, best of luck. Thanks, Peter. All right, moving on. Question number 3 comes in from Catherine. Hi there, Catherine. Thank you for your question. So Catherine says, can an estate agent use photos that are almost 4 years old? We've put an offer in on a house, and I keep referring back to the photos, then realise there's no point because they don't show the damp, the damage, and the current state of the property. Surely they shouldn't have used photos so old in the first place. Isn't there any kind of law against this? Well, that's a great question, Catherine. Thank you for submitting that. I would say, Catherine, in this sort of situation, it's certainly not good practice what you're experiencing here, and I don't know the reason why an agent would use photographs that are almost 4 years old. And again, I don't know where you've got that time frame from, but I presume it was probably the last time the property was listed for sale. And sometimes, depending upon weather conditions or the time of year, it might make sense for an agent to use photos that were taken maybe in the previous spring or the previous summer, when things are looking a little bit more rosy, rather than snow on the roof and all the rest of it. But if there is a serious issue here where you're suggesting that the property is substantially different and the condition has deteriorated massively since the photos were taken, then it's possible that the agents may be falling foul of the Properties Misdescriptions Act. And that's something that might be a little bit difficult to prove, but it may be worth investigating if you feel that you're being duped. The challenge you've got, of course, Catherine, here is that, do you want to go down the road of a potentially contentious situation with an estate agent who may or may not be in breach of the Properties and Misdescriptions Act, particularly as you haven't yet bought the property, from what I'm reading into your question here, then you've either got to make the choice to walk away, or you kind of do your own due diligence. And this is what caveat emptor, if you've not come across that phrase before, Catherine, but caveat emptor basically means buyer beware. So as a buyer, you're responsible for doing your due diligence on the property that you're interested in buying. And that essentially means having the property surveyed and valued to make sure that you're not overpaying for it, and to make sure that things like the damage or the damp or the current state of the property is accurately recorded within a surveyor's report. And that may be a useful instrument for you to try and negotiate the purchase price of the property more in your favour, and certainly highlight to the agents that the condition of the property isn't what you originally thought it was based on the photographs that were presented. And as a consequence, now that more information has come to light, the price that you're willing to pay needs to reflect the current condition of the property. Okay. It would be unlikely that you would just make an offer based on a couple of photographs on a website and, you're going to take the property forward and live in it for the rest of your life based on that. I'd say that's unlikely. And here's where I think that you might fall into a problem if you're going to try and go after the estate agent for that. It's far better to just, put this one down to experience, I would say, and, make sure that you've got the survey and evaluation done at least. And then obviously you need to make sure that your solicitor's on board to ensure that the property that you're buying is going to be okay, that the title checks out, that, you're not going to have any potential problems rearing their head in the future that you might not be aware of. So I hope that helps, Catherine. Really appreciate you submitting that question, and I wish you the best of luck in terms of getting that one done sooner rather than later. And what it might pay you to do, Catherine, if you're getting into this point of getting frustrated, is to actually revisit the property and take some photographs yourself. Obviously, ask the seller's permission if you can take those photographs, but I would certainly do that myself just as an aid memoir, and also to, perhaps maybe even get some quotes on the work that needs to be done, so that you've got a full factual picture of the property that you're actually buying and what it's going to cost you to get it to the condition that you want it to be. And then you're ready to get started on the property the moment that you move in. All right. So I hope that helps, Catherine. Anything else that you need support and help on, please let me know. More than happy to help you out there as best we can. And I wish you the best of luck. And hopefully you'll have a new house for the new year, which will be amazing. All right. Thanks, Catherine. So moving on, question number 4 comes in from Ashley. Hi there, Ashley. Thanks for your question and for being part of the WiggyWam community. Ashley says, I'm thinking about getting into property investing. On a couple of groups I've been part of, people talk about a lease option, but I don't know what that is. Am I right in thinking it's similar to rent to buy, or is it something else entirely? Any help would be appreciated. All right, Ashley, well, thank you for your question. Great that you think about getting into property investing, and also good to see that you're not being put off by the current uncertainty in being a landlord and all the rest of it. But that's only one aspect of property investing. Of course, you could be looking at other different strategies, which is what's worth looking at here. Now, to answer your question about what a lease option is, it's actually not dissimilar to rent to buy, which is kind of exactly what you've hit the nail on the head of there. So those phrases are used sort of interchangeably, sometimes with different people depending upon who's advertising the deal and all the rest of it. But the point of a lease option is that it gives you the right, or the option, shall we say, hence the name, to buy a property, but not the obligation. Okay, now it might be a property that's built, it might be a piece of land or something of that nature that you have, you can put a lease option in place on. And it can be quite an interesting way to help you get into a property deal without having to use a ton of cash to fund a deposit and to fund all the legal fees and all the rest of it. It may well be that you're just putting a small down payment up front into the deal. You're then going to make monthly payments. And then at the end of the deal, you'll then like to pay a balloon payment to close off any existing finance that might be on the property at that point. Okay, so that's typically how a lease option structure works. But the thing is, Actually, there is a lot of flexibility with lease options as a deal structure type, and it's worth sort of investigating fully what's actually been agreed and whether or not you're the one doing the deal and agreeing it with the person who's selling the property, or whether or not you're buying it as a pre-arranged lease option, i.e. an investor or a deal sourcer has already gone out and they've negotiated the deal, and you're just sort of slipping into the saddle, if you like, to take over that deal and run it forward. Or whether or not, and I have seen this a lot, so just be careful, Ashley, is whether or not you're actually just buying the lead to discuss a potential lease option with a seller. Okay, and that's something that I have seen on a number of different forums. You need to be careful because you could be paying out 150 quid to have a phone call with somebody who isn't actually interested in selling, or isn't actually interested in doing a lease option, or doesn't even know what a lease option is. And therefore, you've got a big mountain to climb in terms of explaining it all to them and trying to get the deal agreed. Okay, and particularly if you haven't done this before, which it sounds to me like you haven't, then you're going to have a hard time trying to convince somebody that this is the right way to go with selling their property. Okay, so what I would encourage you to do, Ashley, if you're thinking about going down this route, is to do your due diligence. Okay, you must do your due diligence on this. You've got to look into the terms of the deal. One of the things that does catch people out is the position the property is likely to be in at the end of the term of the option. Excuse me. And what that means is, if the deal's it might be a 3-year lease option, it might be a 5, or it might be a 25-year lease option, whatever the time frame of the deal is. At the end of that term, is there enough equity in the property to make it, what's the word I'm looking for here, in order for you to execute the deal and buy it and clear any remaining mortgage debt that might be on the property? Okay, so to give you an illustrative example, let's say, for example, the mortgage on the property is 250,000. Okay, that's the current mortgage using fairly round figures, and it's an 11-year lease option. And at the end of the term, you have doubts whether or not that property might be worth 250,000. It is possible properties, slip into negative equity and all the rest of it. So you've got to think, in 11 years. When this deal comes to an end, is there going to be enough equity in the property, or is the property going to have increased in value enough for me to execute the deal at 300,000, 325,000 to allow me to pay off that existing mortgage? And that may not be the case. Only you can answer that by doing your due diligence, which is why I'm encouraging you to do that. So that's something really important to do. The other thing I would say is you need to be very careful, and this is where a solicitor will come in handy in terms of helping you understand whether or not you could be in breach of the mortgage terms and conditions on the existing property. Now, if the property is owned free and clear by the seller, then no big deal. It would be great that you could enter into a deal as far as that's concerned, but the likelihood is there will be a mortgage on the property. The seller needs to manage that, and the payments need to be made every single month in order to keep their credit rating clean and all the rest of it. And then at the time of execution of the deal, there has to be sufficient equity in, unless you're going to put your hand in your pocket because you like the property that much and then pay off any difference between the value of the property and what the current mortgage is. And you may not want to do that. And what would be very unfair would be to get 11 years into the deal and then drop the seller drop it on the seller's toes and say, actually, I don't want to buy this property anymore, because they've kind of, after 11 years, of course, they will have bought into the idea that you're going to be the one that owns and manages and runs this property. So you need to be ethical as far as that's concerned, I would say, in terms of doing that deal. But obviously, it does offer a huge degree of flexibility. And it may well be that you could take an option on a piece of land, for example, and the whole reason you're taking that option is that you're not having to part with a huge amount of cash to buy the land and then try and get planning permission on it. If the planning is refused, then you simply exit the option and you don't have to worry about paying tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds for a piece of land that would otherwise be worthless to you if you couldn't get planning. Okay, so I hope that helps, Ashley. You might want to listen to this explanation a couple of times just to try and get your head around what I've been saying. But if you do need any more help and support on that, then let me know, because I do like this sort of troubleshooting around different property investment deals and that sort of thing. So it's worth sort of getting a teeth into if it's something you want to kick around on at a future date. All right. So best of luck with that, Ashley, and let me know if I can help you any further. All right. So moving on, question number 5 comes in here from Brett. Hi there, Brett. Thanks for your question. So Brett is saying, I'm just about to buy my first home at the age of 35. Over the next 20 years, I want to gain enough properties to have an income of £3,000. I also want to own 4 properties in a trust so that when I die, my children won't have to pay capital gains tax. In about 5 years, I want to release enough money. In about 5 years, I want to release enough equity from my home to start me off. We are doing it up and extending it, etc. What would be the best way to do this? All right, Brett. Well, thank you for your question there. Seems to be a few property investing questions creeping into this week's webinar, which is all good because we welcome questions from anybody connected with the property industry. But in terms of what you've outlined here, Brett, it does seem to be that you've given yourself a very realistic and lengthy timescale here in order to do this. And it's great that you're sort of thinking long term, because what I do see in a lot of the property industry is that, this is particularly driven by people that sell the property investment training, for example, is that you can be an overnight millionaire and everything's going to be rosy. And we all know that that's unlikely to be the case. And it does take time and effort, and consistent time and effort, to be acquiring properties and building a portfolio, particularly with the way that things have been going over the course of the last couple of years. But one of the things I want to say from where you are, doing some form of equity release on your existing home may be a good way to help you get started. It is what a lot of people do initially, is to release some cash from their property through some kind of remortgage or refinancing exercise on their existing home, and then they take that cash and start using it to put down payments on properties, or deposits, shall we say, and then getting mortgages in place and growing the portfolio that way. Now, one of the things that you want to be careful of here, Brett, is that taking on more debt, in effect, to build your portfolio potentially increases your risk of zero. And the risk of zero is effectively, over a long enough time scale, there is a possibility that things could go wrong. You could lose your job. You could get caught up in, I don't know, a banking fraud, or God knows what else. There could be something that might happen over that period of time, and you might be in danger then of losing, your home and your portfolio. Okay, so these are things to be thought through, and to be given the respect that they deserve when you're talking about taking on this sort of opportunity. So one of the things to bear in mind might be, if you are going to take that short-term risk, make it as short-term as possible. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you release, let's use round figures, 50 grand to get started, okay? You might put that into 2 or 3 properties, do them up, and then sell them, okay? Now, there will be capital gains issues and all the rest of it, but the point is, if you're then getting back, say, 80,000 or more, then you might do another couple of properties, do them up and sell them, so that you're getting back maybe 110, something of that nature, and then taking that 50 grand and paying it back off your mortgage. So you've used that, you've taken that debt short term, you've used it to buy a couple of properties, you've flipped them, so you're not holding them long term. You've then created extra cash, okay? Yes, you've paid a bit of tax on it, but the point is, you've then got a pot of money that you've created that isn't risking your main home in order to grow your business. Does that make sense? So that's something to kick around, and this is something I would look at if I was in your shoes. And then you can take that pot of money, and let's say you've made 50, 60, 70,000 by doing 3 or 4 flips. The next step might be to run 2 strategies side by side. So you might be in a position to flip, take that pot of money, divide it into 2. One strategy is flipping properties for profit, as you've been doing. And the other stage is to buy below market value, put the money in for a deposit, then do a refinancing exercise later on, we pull that deposit out and go again. But what you've got to bear in mind is when you're doing this refinancing exercise is that your exposure to capital gains tax isn't based on the level of equity in the property. It's based on the increase in value over the period of ownership. And one of the things that catches some investors out, particularly the ones that have been in it for a while, is that they, as the property rises in value, they strip out equity in order to buy more properties. Okay, and then they end up with a property that's worth maybe 300,000, but they owe 250,000 on it, but they bought it for 150,000. Okay, so the values increase massively, but when they sell it, there's only a little bit of equity, and that the capital gains tax bill might be more than the available equity in the property. Okay, so it's something to think about, and it's something to be very careful with if you're going to go down this road. There's a lot to think about, and what I would be doing, as I say, is looking at building this flip model to generate more cash. And then if you are making chunks of equity in the future or chunks of cash, you can then maybe use that to pay down your existing mortgage on your own property, or buy more property so that rental income comes in, and that frees you up from your job, or frees your partner up from their job, and you can use that excess cash flow to pay down your debt. Okay. Your mortgage. There might be another way, which is what I've talked about earlier on within this webinar. So go back and listen to the start of that, Brett, if you've just jumped onto this question. But you might want to consider things like lease options as a way to go forward. Okay, so that it might allow you to start earlier than 5 years' time, and particularly if property prices are going to fall within the next 12 to 24 months, then you might want to consider getting into the market now so that you're in a position to then keep buying sensibly priced properties, with the hope that as the market pulls back round and prices start to rise again, you're going to get the benefit of that rise in property value. And one thing I must say, Brett, is that a lot of people get the mistake or buy into the mistaken idea that properties only go up in value, and they don't. They can fall in value, and if the property market drops and you need to sell, that's when things can cause you a real problem. Okay, so that's what I would look at doing. Just to give you some perspective on this, obviously over the course of, I think it was 20 years, you said that you wanted to build this portfolio. In 20 years' time, £3,000 a month is probably going to have a lot less purchasing power than it does right now. And I would say that typically, if you're looking at a profit of around about £150 a month, if you're buying well and you're building buy-to-lets as a stable portfolio base, and you're getting that £150 a month from your buy-to-lets, then you might want to think about the fact that you're going to need about 20 properties to reach that goal. And as I say, the buying power of that £3,000 a month could be a lot less in 20 years' time than it is right now. So you might want to think about a mix of strategy. As I say, flipping, it could be, your buy-to-lets, it could be a few lease options in there, it could be, one or two HMOs, or it could be service accommodation as a spread to help you get to that income goal a lot quicker. And just bear in mind that if you, flip a property and you make, let's say, 30 grand a year for round numbers, that's effectively 10 months of your income goal hit in one deal. Okay, and it's not, obviously it's not easy just flipping property. It makes it sound very, very blasé. In a hot market, yes, you can do it. But in a market that we're likely to experience over the course of the next 2 years, that's going to take a little bit of extra time to get going. So, I'd encourage you to get some education on this, Brett. There's a lot of resources out there. We've got quite a few resources on our website, WiggyWam.co.uk. If you want to have a look at that, then we've got a learning center in there where you can get some more knowledge and information about how to get started in property investing and finding the right property for you, and the fundamental principles that you want to be adhering to when it comes to buying property to build a portfolio. But I would really encourage you to get educated, because I do see many newcomers to the industry kind of losing their shirt because they don't know what they're doing. All right, so it is something you need to be careful of. Tread carefully, especially if you're earning good money. Some of the worst situations I've seen with property investors is when they've been earning good money, they've gone in to buy a property or build a property portfolio, they've kind of left it to other people to do because they're earning good money so they can afford to pay them. And then when they've looked at it in the cold light of day, the deals they've got aren't actually as great as they thought they were, and as a consequence they end up losing even more money. So Take your time. It sounds like you've got the right attitude and the right time scale. Take your time, get some education. If we can help out, obviously let me know. But I wish you the best of luck with that, because it sounds like it's quite exciting. Also, just to answer that bit as well, you mentioned about putting properties into trust. That can be obviously a very useful strategy for you to consider doing. I would take some serious advice on that from a professional who knows what they're talking about in that field, so that you can make sure that what you're doing is fully compliant with UK tax law, just to make sure that you're not going to do something like one of these offshore trusts, which I have seen being offered in the UK market, which may or may not fall into alignment with UK tax law. And then the problem is you don't find out about it until such time as a claim is brought against you, and then you're having to, find that a court ruling means that your trust is no longer applicable and your portfolio is ripe for the picking. So yeah, just bear that in mind. All right. But best of luck, and let us know if we can help you out further, Brett. All right. Fantastic. Moving on. So today's final question comes in from Mandy. Hi there, Mandy. Thank you for your question. So Mandy says, I'm hoping to put an offer in on a property in the new year. It will be my first home. And it's a 2-bed flat for around 125,000. The seller hasn't put it on the market yet, so I will be hoping to do a private sale. The flat needs painting and new carpets throughout, which I said I'm happy to do. My question is, what offer should I go in with first? The seller bought it 5 years ago for 110,000. Thanks in advance. All right, Mandy. Well, thank you for your question, and congratulations on hopefully finding your first home. And it sounds like quite an exciting journey you're about to go on. So best of luck. Hope it all goes well. Just to give you some pointers on this, Mandy, as you are a first-time buyer and this is your first property that you're looking to buy, one of the things I would encourage you to do, it's okay doing a private deal, but one of the things I would encourage you to do is to actually look at potentially employing an estate agent to help manage the deal through to completion. So one of the things that people don't realize is when it comes to buying a property, finding it and putting an offer in is literally scratching the surface of the amount of work that's got to be done to get the deal through and for you to get the keys to your new home. Okay. And it's that period that can cause so many deals to fall through and can cause many situations where buyer and seller fall out, or they end up having arguments because things become protracted when they get into solicitors' hands. And my view would be, if you can pay an estate agent a nominal fee because you've agreed a deal between you, but the estate agent will just handhold you through to the completion, it may help you to keep the deal together, manage everything effectively, and have somewhere where you can go to for advice and guidance on what to do next as part of the process. Now, without this being a shameless plug for our book, I'll encourage you to get a copy of Home Buyer Secrets as well, because this actually shows you the full ins and outs of everything that's required to help you with the deal. But I would also encourage you and the seller to get what we call a protect your pocket policy in place. And you can go to wiggywam.co.uk/protect your pocket. And what this is, it's a cost indemnity insurance policy. Now, I know you've asked me the question about what offer should you go in with, but the problem is, once the offer's accepted is that's when you're going to start to incur costs. And if, God forbid, the deal falls through, then you're going to lose that money that you've incurred in costs. Okay. And that's not a great position to be in for anybody. So for less than 200 quid, it's well worth getting a protect your pocket policy in place, because it will pay out for you if the deal falls apart and you spent money on solicitors' fees, surveyors' fees, and everything else in between. Okay. So that's the first thing I would do for both you and the seller. But obviously, if the seller doesn't want to know, protect your interests and do that first and foremost. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do, it sounds as though you've got a reasonable relationship with the seller if you know them privately and you're putting this deal together. So the second thing I would do is I'd actually talk to the seller about what their objectives are with the property and why they want to sell it. Okay. And what do they want to achieve out of it? And that might sound like a bit of a convoluted question to be asking, but excuse me, the point is, with property sales, there can be things that people are trying to achieve as a result of putting the property up for sale, but they may not vocalize them. So one of the things I've found with property is that a lot of people just think, well, yeah, I don't want this property anymore, therefore I'll just sell it. And the reason they're not looking at renting it is because they are worried that, you know, tenants are going to trash the property and all the rest of it. So it could well be that you could strike up a conversation around what could be a lease option, as we talked about earlier within the webinar. And the reason I mention that to you, Mandy, is because I don't know what your personal financial situation is, but you know, you may or may not qualify for a mortgage. I don't know whether you've explored that step. You may or may not qualify for a mortgage. Have you spoken to a mortgage broker? You know, have they approved you for a mortgage and all the rest of it? Because again, this can be a stage where deals fall apart because you go and sit in front of the mortgage broker, you give them all your pay slips and all the rest of it, and you can't get the level of mortgage that you thought you could get. As a consequence, you know, you're then having to let the seller down because you're not able to buy the property. So, you know, it might open to the door to a conversation about a lease option where you could say, you know, what if we paid you £2,000, £3,000 deposit? We'll do the redecorating and the new carpets, and we'll pay you X amount every single month. And then in 3 or 5 years' time, we'll pay you X for the property, whatever that might be, 110, 115, 120, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, that structure of a deal may help you and the seller to get the best out of the property. Okay, and the reason I mention that is because when you, the reason I mention that is when you're in this and you're trying to go into a property deal, you want to mitigate your risk as much as possible. And if you can get into a property without having to put down a huge deposit, in this case, as a first-time buyer, it might be that you're putting down 5% or maybe 10% deposit. I don't know, you've not alluded to how much cash you've got available to put down as a deposit. But the point is, if you can put down less money up front, you've then got more of a financial buffer in the background to weather any potential financial storms that might be coming in the future with a recession on the horizon. Okay. So I hope that helps. I know there's a bit of a twist on things, Mandy, and I know it's probably not what you were thinking, but I wanted to mention that because it could be something that you could use to your advantage in order to help get this deal across the line. Now, what I've seen typically with a lot of first-time buyers, Mandy, is when they have an asking price in mind, they will typically offer very close to that asking price because they don't want to upset the seller and they don't want to lose the property. Okay, whereas more hardened veterans, if you like, of property buying and selling will usually go in with a cheeky first offer and then, work their way up. But the point is, once you've gone in with an offer, it's very difficult to backtrack and lower that offer if you think you could have bought the property at a better deal, because the seller says yes immediately when you make your offer. Okay. Now, one of the things I want you to remember is that for every £1,000 that you save on the purchase price of the property, you're effectively saving about £2,000 over the course of a 25-year mortgage. Okay, so you're typically paying back, £2 for every pound that you're borrowing. Okay, now that's a huge saving over the course of a 25-year mortgage. If you save 10 grand, you're effectively saving 20,000 over the course of a 25-year mortgage. That is not to be overlooked. Okay, so if I was in your situation, I'd just go and have a conversation with the seller and talk to them and say, look, I just want to know, what are your expectations with the property? What do you hope to recover from the sale of the property? Do you just want to recover what you spent on it originally, i.e. the 110? Do you think it's gone up in value, or do you think the condition actually means that the value is stagnant or has actually become less? Okay. And once you've got that, then you can go with your gut feeling around what the appropriate offer is to put forward. And I'm not trying to avoid the question here, but being a first-time buyer and being somebody who's bought and sold a lot of properties in their life, there's a big difference. If it was me going in, I'd probably be starting at 110 or less based on the value of the property. But that's just me, because at this sort of level of the property, I'd maybe be looking to acquire it in order to rent it out, which obviously a completely different strategy is what you're looking to do, to buy it and be there as your first home. Okay, so you want to reflect on, how long are you likely to own that property for? How long you like to live there for? Is it the fact that you might be, starting a family and therefore you need more space in a few years' time? The key point is you don't want to be overpaying and you want to try and get the best deal that you can. but also not upset the seller so that you lose out on the property. Okay, so I hope that helps, Mandy. Wishing you the best of luck with that, because I hope it's a new home for the new year, which will be amazing. And obviously, if there's anything else that we can do to help, then please do let me know. But I hope I've given you some food for thought and some options to explore, and kick around as a result of, taking this important step towards buying, your first home, which would be amazing. So good luck with that, Mandy. Wishing you the best of luck, and let us know if we can help you. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for your time, care, and attention today by being part of the webinar. Really appreciate it. We're here every week doing this to answer any of your property-related questions, whatever they may be, whether you're an estate agent, conveyancer, letting agent, removals expert, surveyor, or a mortgage broker, or anybody else connected with the entire process. We're here week in, week out to answer your important and pertinent questions, whether that's business-related, property-related, or anything else. So feel free to send them in to us. You can send them through to us on email, which is happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. That's happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk. You can also go to our website, which is wiggywam.co.uk. That's wiggywam.co.uk, and connect with us there and send your questions in. Or you can find us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @wiggywam_UK. So that's @wiggywam_UK. And we'd be delighted to see you on a future episode of our webinars very soon. So that's all from me today, guys and girls. Happy New Year to you all once again. Wishing you all the very, very best. And we're always here to help and assist wherever we can. All right. You take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.